know what you're about to listen to? The Coolville Urbanism Podcast. I'm your host, Mikael colville-andersen. I have always sought out inspiration for my work in urban design in unorthodox places. My background is not one rooted in the academic learning of my profession. I came at urbanism from a background in literature and film. I supplement the solid pile of academic research that I constantly pore over with my own observations in daily life, the experience I gain on the many projects I've worked on around the world, but also from things like working with kids who have taught me more about urbanism than anyone else. But then there is photography, literature, psychology, and philosophy. I've learned so much from the likes of Calvino, Bukowski, Michel de Certeau, Søren Kierkegaard, and, of course, Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Falling Down, for example, are two of the greatest films about urbanism ever to come out of Hollywood. Then there's Honoré, Canadian writer and thinker, and really the person who launched the entire slow philosophy and movement on a fast-paced planet with his seminal book, In Praise of Slow. Back in 2008, I was inspired by his work to start the slow bicycle movement, and his thinking about slow is ever present in my life. And we've had long conversations about how slow living interacts with my philosophies about life-sized cities, and it was high time that we filmed it. COVID-19 got in the way, but the other day we whipped together a Zoom conversation. We talk about slowing down cities, what kind of cities we like, the effect of the pandemic on people's perception of their cities. If there is a silver lining in this pandemic, it might be the fact that many of us have been forced to slow down to an agreeable pace. We also talk about his new book, Bolder, Making the Most of Our Longer Lives, and how aging and ageism interconnect with urban life, and how despite our aging populations, we're not planning our cities for them. For all the talk of democratic design and universal design, we are not seeing any widespread application in our cities. Carl is a constant source of inspiration for me, personally and professionally, and bantering back and forth with him is always enjoyable. If you like, you can watch the video of this conversation on the Life-Sized City YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Life-Sized City. Now, let's get bantering. Carl, how you doing, buddy?
I'm very well. I'm as well as you can be in the middle of a global pandemic.
But hey, here we are. I miss you, man. I mean, we would have probably seen each other at some point this year, if not for the pandemic. So at least I'm looking at your mug right now, huh?
We would have been rubbing shoulders literally and burning the midnight oil, I'm sure, in a couple of cities around the world if this hadn't happened. Definitely.
As we do, yes. As we did, as we might once again, yes. We've been talking about doing this for a while, you and me, and sort of talking about your work and how that applies to sort of my my area of interest. And I think it's a cool angle. I mean, when you talk about, like with the COVID-19 year, like it's been a slow year for you, hasn't it, really? I mean, have you slowed down a lot, follow all of your philosophies to the letter this year?
Well, this has been a year of slow, definitely. But it's funny, when it first hit back in March, so many people were saying to me, oh, you must be so happy, right? This is exactly what you wanted, a global slowdown. Nah, I mean, this is just a total nightmare, right? It's an ordeal for everyone in lots of different ways. But right, I try to see the silver lining. I do think that this has been or carries on being a kind of reset moment. I think a lot of people have had time just to rethink pace, right? The speed in which they work, eat, make love, walk, whatever it is, right? I think that COVID has forced that upon us. We're all going through a global workshop in slow at the moment, right? We didn't want it, but we've got it. So I kind of think this is a time to try and learn a few lessons, right? And carry them forward, hopefully.
It's kind of a perfect storm for what you've been working for many years, maybe.
Yeah, no, it is. I think if you look back over the last whatever it is now, 7 months. God, are we 7 months deep? Most of us have spent the last 7 months probably doing less, rushing less. Maybe working less, just less. And I think a lot of people have discovered that, contrary to what conventional wisdom tells you, which is you've got to cram more and more into less and less time and juggle and do more and more things, that actually less is more, and I think people have really rediscovered a lot of the joys of slowing down. So if you look at right across the world, the sorts of activities people have drifted back to in these last few months, it's things like baking sourdough, right? It's playing board games. It's going for walks.
Yeah.
It's sometimes just sitting around doing nothing, right? Just doing things for the sake of it, and sometimes doing nothing at all and not feeling guilty about that. So I think that's been a real bracing wake-up call for a lot of people who realize that, you know what? It's not so bad reconnecting with your inner tortoise.
I mean, I thought about you, but we had a lockdown back in the spring here in Copenhagen. I know London, where you are, just went into lockdown again here in October. But I remember thinking about you wandering around my neighborhood, because that's all we could do here. We could go out. Everything was closed. People just wandering aimlessly up and down the streets of their neighborhoods and discovering, whoa, there's a park. It's 10 minutes from here, and I just never go, and I'm thinking, okay, Carl would want me to do this. I channeled my inner Carl, and, but just walking, because there was nothing else to do, right? The kids were at home, so going out with the kids, going for a run maybe even. But yeah, just that whole, just chill. I mean, for me, it's not that hard, because I kind of live a freelance life, so I'm not in a hurry, when I'm at home or whatnot and working here from home. But yeah, it was really, I noticed the effect on it, and just studying all the other humans on the urban landscape, it was like they had the kind of a dazed look on their face because of the pandemic and the whole topsy-turvy world, but you could just sort of see them looking at the buildings. I didn't notice the detail. You know what I mean? Like, it was just, people were just, their eyes were open and they were just absorbing everything at a nice slow pace, right?
I think that's true. I think that's something that the pandemic or the lockdown that went along with it has given us. It's sort of allowed us to, or forced us to take the red pill, right? And I think it's opened a lot of people's eyes to what has always been around them. And this is one of the things that we sacrifice on the altar of speed, is deep, rich experience of whatever it is we're going through, whether it's our neighborhood and the urban landscape, whether it's relationships and the things people are saying to us, whether it's the art that surrounds us, the work we do. Fast is all about touching the surface, skimming along, moving as quickly as possible. Slow dives deep, right? It gets down to the core. It gets to the heart of the matter. And that's why, Milan Kundera, the famous novelist, Czech novelist, said once that there's an intimate bond between slowness and memory. And I think that's so true, that when you're rushing through your life, nothing sticks because everything's a blur, right? And I think a lot of us, certainly pre-pandemic, had that experience of getting to the end of the month or even the year and looking back and thinking, whoa, that was 2019, right? I can't remember what I had for lunch, 2 days ago. I can't remember how that Netflix series I finished watching last week ended, right? Because nothing sticks. We're moving too fast. And I think what COVID has done is it forced us to slow down, and we're forging memories that are going to last, right? And we're actually noticing the texture, the nuance, the details, as you say, of the things around us. And it's as simple as just walking through streets you've rushed through in the past. Suddenly you notice that cupola. You notice the way the light falls on a window. You hear neighbors, right? You hear birdsong again. So all of this richness, this cornucopia of detail has always been there for us. And I think slowing down through COVID is allowing us to tap into it.
It's interesting you mentioned, like, you can hear your neighbors, because I think one of the urbanism effects of the lockdown here was that, yeah, like everywhere, the streets were empty. There was no car traffic. You could hear your city, man, like in a way we never have the opportunity to do so. But the number of noise complaints in Copenhagen, people calling the police, it's just gone through the roof. Like, we have some restrictions on bars here. They close at 10. So a lot of the young people are going out, into public space and partying, right? And the police are having to scold them. So people are complaining about these maybe loud parties in places where they never normally took place. But generally, people are just complaining more than ever. And I'm just thinking, like, because you're home alone all day, you're not gone for that 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And all of a sudden you just notice every sound, and then it just becomes an irritation. So your otherwise quiet neighbor is now the noisiest human on the planet in your perception, right? Kind of a funny little angle there that nobody saw coming. I don't think we saw anything coming, really. We're all still trying to figure it out. I'm fine with my neighbors. They're pretty quiet and stuff. But yeah, I can hear them a lot more. But a lot of other people are going, oh, it's just too noisy. Really? Like, your yardstick, 8 months ago was different than it is now, dude.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the big questions about urbanism and thinking about how cities are constructed and how we experience them is noise, right? When does sound become noise? When does the child playing next door become an irritant and all that? And how does I'd be interested to know, how does that fit into the idea of a life-sized city, right? If you think back to, a lot of people would say the high watermark of urban development was the Italian hilltop towns in medieval times, right? Where people did live on top of each other. Now, they didn't have Netflix blaring out and there weren't so many electronic noises out there. but they would have heard their neighbors a lot, right? And I wonder if, I don't know, do you have any thoughts on how that, comparing across epochs and how sound and noise fit together in our cities, shared spaces?
Every city was designed slow, right? Not just even the hilltop towns, the large Italian sort of fortress towns like Siena and stuff like that. Even Rome, neighborhood by neighborhood, it was all very, of course, we didn't have, cars flying through. So it was all a very human pace. But yeah, trying to push that back to that place is really what the life-sized city is all about. People trying to just slow their neighborhood down and, take away some car parking, put in some picnic tables or making play streets for kids or whatever. That's all sort of, a part of your slow philosophy. I think one thing for me is with the COVID-19 pandemic is that we all of a sudden have a shared vision all over the planet. People that have nothing to do with each other all looked out their windows for a period of time and went, wait, it's so nice without all those cars, right? And I think that's a strength for us. You're talking about memories. And yeah, we're all going to remember what it was like, the thing that they told us was never possible, right? Car-free streets. That's going to be a force for good in citizen activism, which is what the Life-Sized City, man, really focuses on. People are going to go, hey, wait, it was really cool, and now all the cars are back, and that kind of sucks, and maybe we should write an email to the city or go to some citizen meetings or whatever, engage themselves more. I don't know, I don't have any data yet about an increase in the number of citizens showing up at public hearings, but we all have that one very, very vivid memory of quiet streets and non-polluted cities because of the traffic disappearing, right? That's one of the things I'm putting my money on as a positive, is that we're all going to realize, hey, our city was really nice, even though everything sucked, right? And why can't we do that every day? Excuse me, who do I ask? Who do I talk to about that, right?
Not just ask, but who do I lean on, right? I mean, this is the thing, is we get people actually, whether it's writing to their MPs or their, members of parliament or whatever. And because I mean, at the moment, the political class are very exposed to us. I mean, they're having to make big decisions that affect our lives every day. They're coming out with press conferences. So this is a very opportune moment, I think, for us as citizens to stand up and say, you know what, we went through some stuff that was pretty awful, but some of it was good. And why can't we find ways now to embed those good bits and keep them? And I do think I'm a natural born optimist, and I'm definitely seeing so many examples around the world of changes that are occurring in the fabric and the running of cities that feel like they're not here today, gone tomorrow. They feel like they're here to stay, right? I mean, I live in London, right? So we've seen huge changes in roads everywhere being set aside for cyclists, many more cycling lanes. Just literally 20 meters from my front door, there is a shopping street, which always has traffic on it. It's a lovely street with lots of little mom and pop shops and so on, but it's always got traffic. During the pandemic, at the beginning of the summer, they decided to close the street completely to traffic for all weekend, all the way through the summer. And it was such a hit, right, that they've decided to extend it. They've extended it now to the end of October, and who knows what will happen at the end of October. But it just shows that when people try something, they savor it, they love it, it can stick. And it's an extraordinary transformation what happens on my street down there. You go down, it's like a brothel, right? It's just full of people of all ages, gossiping, flirting, drinking, eating, rollerblading. It's just this kind of carnival of humanity. And it's been made possible by a very simple tweak, which is to close a road off, right? You wouldn't even need or perhaps even want that road to be closed off 7 days a week, just because of the nature of flow and footfall and traffic and who's around. But it makes perfect sense in the weekends to do it. Going to be tougher in the winter, the weather not so amenable, but I can see it carrying on, and certainly will come back next summer. So, this is the kinds of things that we dig in our heels and we really, really lean in and lean on, right? Our elected representatives, they can be with us forever, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think also, politicians are scrambling all over the world, but the citizens are also experiencing more time on their hands following the pandemic, so that they're actually paying attention to these politicians more because they're at home, or they got more time, or they're really engaged in the pandemic. So yeah, the politicians, I really wouldn't want to be a politician. Most politicians right now, man, that's a lot of pressure that they'll be under. I'm not sorry for them, believe me. I'm just saying it intense. But I mean, your street you mentioned, man, isn't that kind of funny, right? Like that was every street in every city for thousands and thousands of years, every single day. And now we've just forgotten that, and because of the car. I just love it that people are going, wow, right? But they're doing a wow at something that was normal for every human that came before us in cities until like the 1950s, right? But it's a cool little epiphany they're experiencing.
Well, it shows you that that's a basic human need, right? Is to move through the space where you live without fear of being run over, without fear of your children being run over, and just mixing together in close proximity. Obviously, with social distancing now, that's another variable in the equation. But generally speaking, that's a basic human need. So even if we've gone through decades of not having that, we have a folk memory and a biological drive to have that. So you give it to us, and we're gonna spot it right away that it makes sense for us. We're gonna want to keep it. It's the same with social contact separate from streets, right? People spending so much time on social media and electronic communications. When you actually give people a chance to be in a room together or switch off their phones, they love it, right? They light up. They maybe have some withdrawal symptoms at first because they can't check Instagram instantly, but pretty quickly they fall back into that deep eternal human rhythm of being with other human beings, listening, touching, being in uncomfortable silence sometimes, all that stuff. It's all there, right? If we could just let ourselves experience it and then enjoy it and then demand more of it. I mean, I think there's a virtual circle that can very easily be established here. One final thought, just on the idea of the change. As you were talking, I suddenly remembered that this last weekend I was walking down my closed street. And it was funny, I found myself walking on the sidewalk, right, the pavement, when I didn't need to. There were people on the road, and I found myself just naturally falling into that old groove of walking on the sidewalk. And I actually had to stop and think, you know what? I can walk on the road. It's okay. And in fact, I should, right? Because it's an important symbolic gesture to say I'm reclaiming that sacred space that belongs to me as someone who lives here, right? And I then got off the pavement and I felt liberated and cutting edge and like I was some kind of rebel, right? And just enjoyed walking down the middle of the street. But it's interesting how quickly, it's maybe a cautionary tale, how easily we can fall back into those old patterns, just accepting the status quo ante and following the old tracks, which means letting most of the space be for cars. Let's not do that, right? Let's fight that instinct.
That's what we were taught, right? Yeah. No, that's funny. The street that I hang out on the most in Copenhagen, where my local wine bar is, funny that, it's a weird street in Copenhagen, like very, very narrow sidewalk. There are cars in both directions, but it's a super slow street. They call it the French Street. It's like a nickname. And I sit on the bench, outside this place. I've been doing it for years. And it's like watching tennis, just people watching, right? But the sidewalks are super narrow. So once in a while, you'll get like a demonstrative parent with a pram. And if a chair has bumped a bit too far out, it's like, and then, or an elderly person. But then, like, you just look past them and people are walking out on the street. Like, it's all just, the lines are blurred. But then some people are still demonstrative about, this is my pedestrian space, and therefore everybody else get out of the way. But, you just want to say, like, chill, man. Use the street like everybody else is doing, right? It's okay once in a while to do so.
Well, there's always going to be sticks in the mud, aren't there, right? But I think that by and large, people get it, right? It's just because it's what we're made for, right? So you give it to us. We're going to latch onto it and want more of it. I mean, you talk about speed of roads. That's something you've seen a lot in London here in the last few years. They brought down the speed limit across whole boroughs of the city from 30 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour. They lopped off quite a bit of speed, and it does make a palpable difference in those neighborhoods. I notice myself because I'm somebody who rollerblades on the road. I cycle a lot, and I also have a car, which I use sometimes. So I kind of see it from the three different angles. And I feel like it's made a seismic shift in the way those areas feel and the way that people, the different players on the board game of city life interact, right? So if you're driving through at 20, people are less afraid, right? They're more likely to demand their space to cross the road. You'll see more cyclists. Cyclists will push further forward towards the traffic light. You'll see children. You'll see more children out. It's interesting. I mean, I've never done any quantitative studies, but I just feel like you see more kids, maybe kids without parents hovering over them, right? So a tweak like that, right? That's not getting rid of traffic, but it's saying, you know what, we're just going to roll the traffic juggernaut back a little bit. Instead of driving at 30, you're going to drive at 20. And that's going to make a big difference for everybody, right? It also makes driving less stressful, let's be honest, because you don't get anywhere less fast, because that's the nature of traffic in a city. And it's just less stressful driving more slowly, right? That's just one of the things. There are fewer inputs, less distractions, less fear. You just kind of cruise along, you listen to a podcast, you roll down your window, it's just more relaxed, it's more slow, and everybody benefits.
There's not a lot of great storytelling coming out of the UK regarding urbanism really ever, in the past decade or so. But the one that I do know is, the 20s Plenty movement.
Yeah.
That's the NGO that's behind that. I mean, and slowing London down like that, man, that is something that I wish we even had in Copenhagen, you know. So that's pretty cool, man. That's really cool to hear what it's like for you to use the slower streets, right? That's totally the way forward.
And I think as well, we'll have this in Copenhagen, obviously, because everybody's got a bike there, right? But the introduction of public bike networks, right? Or rent bikes that you can ride from the city, you know. That also, we've had that for a few years, but that makes a big difference too, because it just changes the dynamic in the street. There are more bikes per car. A lot of those bikes are being ridden, not now because of COVID, but usually by tourists who aren't used to being on the other side of the road, a little bit unsure, and don't wear a helmet. Just forces everybody to be more attentive, more aware, more slow, right? More present. Whether you're behind the wheel of a car or whether you're one of those wobbly tourists from Italy, right outside Trafalgar Square. And it just shifts that dynamic, shifts the energy to a more gentle, even, I want to say soothing, I might be overstating it, but just a more slow pace, right? That I think works for everybody.
Now, I was wondering something I never asked you, like, you know, what cities do you like personally, right? For other reasons than slow, but the question is also, you know, where do you feel like you are existing in that city at a pace and you know, in an atmosphere that you enjoy, you personally? What cities do you dig?
I'm a big fan of Amsterdam. Actually, I like the scale of it. I like the kind of higgledy-piggledy architecture. I like the fact that it's got water, because I think any city that's got water, that brings another kind of natural vibe to it, which is healthy and lifts the spirits. And then, of course, the Dutch are incredibly good at bicycles. It's very walkable. I sometimes, when I think of other cities that I would live in, I definitely think Amsterdam is right at the top of my list as a place where it's just a joy to move through the space, isn't it? Right? Yeah. Are you a fan of Amsterdam too? I'm guessing you must be. Yeah.
I really like Amsterdam. Absolutely. I think it's cute. I really think it's a cute city, and I enjoy going there and hanging out there, and I have friends there. But yeah, I'm just glad to get home, you know, or, you know, to go to Barcelona or Paris. I don't know. It's just something like.
Barcelona is another one.
It's a cutesy place, and it's fun to be there. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'd ever live there. But
no, neither would I. Culturally, it's not my. I'm much more interested in Mediterranean. You know, I love Barcelona. That's another city I feel great affinity with, and I love Paris. I mean, I think Paris is a bit uniform, staid, safe French. Is that a fair thing to say? I don't know. You know, there are things about Paris that kind of rub me slightly the wrong way, but I do love just walking in Paris, right? With no map, just going to an area and just wandering around. I mean, it's a wonderful city for doing that. And any city that invites you to put away your GPS, to leave your map at home and just get lost on foot or by bike, man, I'm going to sign up to that city. And I think Paris falls into that category.
I mean, Paris, right? Yeah, I used to live there. Like, I got some issues with it, but I mean, then there's the neighborhoods. You know, you meet somebody, oh, you lived in Paris, you know, where do you hang out? And then you rattle off your arrondissement. And like me, it's always like, 1, 3, and 10. That's usually where I hang out, you know. And other people, I'm more to the 5th. It's like, it is a neighborhood city, right? Like, you don't have to experience the whole Paris, good and bad. You literally have that one cafe that you go to every time, and that bistro is good. And I got all my places. So yeah, I like Paris for that. The Barcelona too, you know. I never go to the touristy areas, you know. I go into Poblenou or Gracia, which are very, you know, local Catalan neighborhoods, and that's where you're living the local life without all the wobbly Italians, either on foot or bike.
I think the idea of, you put your finger on a really key word, I think there, which is neighborhoods. I think all great cities are networks of neighborhoods. And London is a bit like that as well. It's not like a North America, like the kind of city that you and I are from, right? Calgary, Edmonton, downtown, and the kind of suburbs, and these are little villages in a way that grew together over time and became a city in London. So, you know, although I'm not that far from the throbbing core of London, I have a neighborhood where I can get anything on foot, right? You know, anything I want, incredible restaurants, places to eat out, food, amazing parks. My kids went to school at, you know, 2-3 blocks away on foot. You know, all of that is there. And I think that is to me, when I think of your phrase, life-sized city, and I think one of a slow city as well, in the kind of slow cities movement, that's got to be pretty high on the wish list, right? Is to have that neighborhood set up, or people talk about the 20-minute neighborhood, right? Where you can get everything you need a 10-minute walk from home, right? So 10 minutes there, 10 minutes back, and that, I mean, Paris has got that. All those different arrondissements you're talking about, London's got it. But Edmonton doesn't, right? Neither do many North American cities. They're all about the car, and they're like that Georges Pompidou infamous quote, right, from French president. What did he say? The time has come to make the city fit the car, not the other way around.
Oh yeah,
what a horrific
quote.
idea.
I forgot about that quote because the former mayor of Paris, who was mayor for 12 years, who started the current urban revolution, and the lady who's now in charge of Paris is continuing his work. His quote is the one that I quote the most. He says, "The fact is that cars no longer have a place in the big cities of our time." So he was taking that Pompidou quote and just, smashing it into the ground.
Yeah.
So
for a good 30 years, it was the utter supremacy of the car. And look where it got us.
Oh, that's why I have a job, right?
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
You've been like the slow dude, right? Like for years. And I've been like the bike dude for years. And now I'm doing completely different things, but I'm still like in people's minds on the internet, who maybe don't know that I'm doing different stuff now in urbanism. But yeah, what's that label like? Because you got a new book now. You sort of moved your focus a bit different. But I mean, which is called Boulder. I want to talk about that. Is it it's a hard kind of like personal brand in a way. You're well known for this thing. Now you're doing something different, but there's still the crossover. You probably still do keynotes in a normal year anyway about slow stuff, where maybe you want to talk about your new book more. I mean, what's that like, having that balance between subject matter?
It's a bit like being a veteran rock star, right? And you go do a gig, and all the fans want to hear your original hits from way back when, and you want to play your new tunes, right? And there's a balance to be struck there. I love the old tunes, right? And in fact, I think the whole slow revolution still has a long way to go, and it never gets old for me. It never gets boring for me because it's always evolving, and there's new challenges and new ways of thinking about it. So that's still very much a part of what I do. But I've kind of realized over the years, and I think you're hinting at it there, that people struggle to hold more than one idea about you. They like to think that, Michael is this thing, or Carl is that thing, or she's that, And as soon as you come along with something new or different, or something that spins off in a tangential direction, that's sort of, what are you on about? Or there must be some kind of connection between what you're doing before and what is the link? So yeah, I kind of bump up against quite a lot of that because I'm just, I'm slow, and Carl, I'm just going to take that to the grave, right? For better or worse. Mostly for better, right? I'm not complaining. But but I'm a journalist by background, and I'm very curious, and I really never want to be caught in a gilded cage. I want to ask questions. So as you say, my new book is about attitudes to aging, right? So I guess with my first 3 books and all the work I've done with slow, I was taking on the cult of speed. What I'm doing now with the new work is taking on the cult of youth, right? Taking down the idea that younger is always better, that it's all downhill from, 35, 40, wherever we're drawing a line, right? The idea there's no wrong side of 40 because, there's just another side of 40, right? There's this side and the other side. And there's so many things that actually improve as we get older. And the world is shifting in ways that mean that it's never been a better time to age in human history. So there's so many reasons to feel good about growing older, and not to think that the aging population, right, which we're always being told is this horrendous catastrophe for the world. It's not that, right? There's so many other ways of seeing it that are much more hopeful. And if we rejig and reboot our way of thinking about aging, we can actually make use of the different kinds of creativity, the different kinds of social skills, the different big picture thinking that older brains bring to the party. If we get away from the cult of youth idea that was famously encapsulated by Mark Zuckerberg, who stood on a stage a few years ago and said, "Young people are just smarter." What? Dude. I mean, and no one said anything, right? And the fact that no one said anything shows just how deep that ageist cult of youth thing runs.
That's all very interesting, but I want to go back to the slow movement. No, I'm just kidding. In urbanism, I have a friend of mine, one of the people I admire the most, and we had this huge discussion, and her rant at the moment is talk about democratic design, where you design a city for everybody in it. And she's saying we just don't do that really anywhere. Kids, we don't care about them. And the elderly, we don't care about them. We only care about the people in the middle who have money, who are working at a job. And, and then the elderly, who cares? So she's like really focused now, on the elderly. And ever since I've had this conversation with her, also my old dad, before he died, when he came to visit in Copenhagen, he would like stumble on the sidewalk, and he would like look down because he lived in Canada where the sidewalks are these, formed, solid formed, concrete. And so here there was cobblestones to trip over and stuff. So I started noticing like, yeah, wow. And ever since I'm talking to her, man, I'm just like studying all the old people in my neighborhood. And there's a lot of them in this neighborhood, which is cool. But yeah, it's just like we're not designing for these people at all. We just don't give a shit about them. And we're just designing for the people, in the middle there with the money. And so I'm thinking, yeah, that's why, your book is relevant also in urbanism, man.
I think so, yeah. I mean, this is one of the big challenges I think we face now is rethinking design, right? Moving to what people call universal design. So you design, and this actually, again, works for everybody, hence the term universal, right? If you design something that is comfortable and works smoothly for an older demographic, younger people are going to love it too, right? And you see that with, I think it was the Ford Focus, I think was the car that they designed for an older generation. They, slightly bigger stuff on the dashboard and easier to get in and out of. And they just made it for older people. And younger people loved it, right? It became a bestseller across all generations. And I think there's a very useful moral and lesson in there, right? That if you design stuff that's good, right? And it works for people who maybe have more needs physically or aren't as strong or whatever, the people who are okay physically for now are going to love it too. And that's something that I sort of feel is creeping into the conversation around design and urbanism and architecture. But it's, man, I don't know what your feeling is, but I feel like we're still pretty early on. We're only coming out of base camp, right? Everest. We've still got a lot of mountain to climb, but I do think the conversation is shifting in that direction. Is that something you feel from where you're sitting?
Yeah, I mean, all globally, aging population. So yeah, we're forced to consider it. I don't see it happening very often. The ultimate place to be old, for me, would be like Japan, Tokyo. Geez, they design everything for the elderly because they have such an aging population, and they're just good at universal/democratic design, right? I don't speak Japanese, so that's kind of a problem. But yeah, they are amazing at providing facilities and activating the elderly and making them still feel a part of society. Where here especially in the Nordics, we just shove them all into care homes because we've paid for that and they've paid for that. So there you go. See you later, right? Out of sight, out of mind. We really need to get the game face on for this. And we're around the same age. I mean, I start thinking about, mortality more than ever before, and not just through my work in urbanism and this focus on an aging population in urbanism, but yeah, you start realizing, those stairs are a bit tricky, if I was 10 years older and not as fit as I hopefully will be in 10 years, Like you start thinking a lot about it, right, as you move around a city. You're very, very active. I'm active as well. Is that why you wrote the book? Because you're getting old?
Well, we're all aging, however old we are, whether you're 25, 35, 55, or 105, we're all aging. I guess I wrote it because, the spark for me was I was at a hockey tournament, playing really well, scoring an amazing goal, and then I discovered I was the oldest player at the tournament. And for some reason, it just rocked me to the foundation. I knew I was one of the oldest, right? I'm not deluded. But somehow to be the oldest, just, I don't know, all these questions I began thinking, are people laughing at me, or should I be here? Should I take up a more age-appropriate pastime like bingo or something, right? And I just, just the very fact that I felt that even though I was enjoying it, I was playing well, that somehow I didn't belong there because of my chronological age, I thought, there's something there. I need to understand why I feel that. Am I right to feel that? Is there another way to feel about my age? So that's kind of where it all unspooled from. And I tell you what, I've got a very clear before and after, right? I definitely was worried about and ashamed about, I think, my age before, or I used to think about it or try not to think about it. Now it doesn't matter. What matters now is not my birth date. What matters is the choices I make and the things I'm able to do, whether I can, play hockey, or the food I cook for the people I love, or the places I travel, the books I read, the politics that's what matters, right? And I think that's what's really changing now worldwide. That's a tectonic shift that's coming, is that chronological age is losing its power to define and limit us. And what matters more and more is who you are as a person, right? What you bring to the party. And I think that's a hugely liberating and human way of thinking about aging, whatever age you are, right? So actually, it's funny. My book, I'm what am I now? Gosh, 52. There, I couldn't even remember my chronological age. But I'm finding that people are reading Boulder who are late 20s, already people around 30 are starting to worry about their age and stuff. And I'm hearing tons of readers in their 40s and stuff. And all the way up, my oldest reader so far that I've heard from has been 96. So it kind of, in a sense, proves the point that we're all victims of ageism. We're all victims in one form or another of the cult of youth. And we'll all benefit if we take down the ageist industrial complex. So that's kind of my new crusade to go alongside the slow crusade.
The ageist industrial complex, man. That's a great phrase. It sounds scary. Anything with industrialist complex at the end of it sounds scary, but yeah.
There are a few of them out there.
No, but it's funny how you felt like, well, I don't know, insecure when you're playing hockey and being the best guy on the ice. Like, I'm thinking, I would own that. Like, I go, you crazy kids today. You don't know hockey. I can tell you about hockey. You know, like, I mean,
yeah.
When I play...
I do now.
I play paddle tennis, you know, and I just started playing like 3 weeks ago. But like, you know, yeah, I'm really good. And like, they're going, you've never played before? No, I played tennis before, but what the fuck? This is easy, you know. You know, and you see all the kids watching you. If you're having a good game with my friends, you see the young people walking in to play on the next court, and they just stop. When they stop and look, I'm going, that's right, kids. Learn from the Jedi Master, you know. So I just thought, I'm hopping here, but man, talking about aging and you know, when we started maybe thinking about mortality more and aging, I mean, I read a bunch of books by the French writer Michel Houellebecq, Atomized, Platform. I read them all around the age of 40, which was the greatest literary mistake I've ever made in my life, because he's writing the books because he was around the age of 40. It was just so depressing. I literally had physical anxiety from reading these books. I'm reading them all again. It's taken me 10 years, right? 12 years even. And I went, you know what? I really like this guy's writing. So I'm literally reading them at the moment. And I'm going, I'm fine with this. Like, it's because he's talking about, like, you know, at 40 and all the science about how your body starts to decompose, you know, and all just this depressing tale of aging. And now I'm 52 and feeling good, and you know, I'm going, yeah, no, I'm fine. But so I can enjoy the books now, where I could not. I literally was physically disgusted by the books, well, the content, right? Anyway, that's kind of funny. So now it's kind of cool. I remember some dude years ago, an older guy when I was younger, he was going, oh man, you gotta just wait till you're 50. You'll play the best tennis of your life. And I'm going, like, really, you old man, 50? Jesus. And now I get it, right? You know, you're playing your great hockey. I'm playing really good tennis at the moment. And, you know, I can ride a bike as far as I want without falling off or being tired. You know, so yeah, it's kind of cool. I kind of get what he meant, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, this is one of the really sad things, is that we are constantly fed the same narrative, you know, and you hear it all the time, all the way from your teens up to your 20s and 30s, you know, you're going to hit 40 and it's game over, right? You know, and it's just not, right? It's just not, in so many different ways. And I think it's funny you say Houellebecq, because of course he really digs down into the downsides and kind of makes a whole fetish of them. I haven't actually read any of his books. I've read a lot of reviews of them and essays and stuff, and I will, now that I hear you reading, perhaps I'll pick one up. But I can imagine that reading one of those books as a 40-year-old man, it might actually give you erectile dysfunction or something. It's so depressing about what. Just give you so much anxiety about what a body can do after the first flush of youth. When in fact, you know, bodies can go on just rocking it in so many different ways, right? And happiness as well. That's the other thing that I think is, I mean, there are many things, but that people don't realize is that human beings follow a U-shaped happiness curve, right? You know, they start high in childhood, bottom out in middle age, there you go, 40, 45, and then bounce back up again, so that the highest rates of happiness, life satisfaction are reported by the over 55s, yeah? So there's so many reasons to look forward to growing older rather than to dread it, to feel fear, shame, guilt, right? Or disgust, all those things that I think we're just being pushed in towards feeling are wrong, because there's a whole other story to tell about aging that's much more nuanced, richer, and actually more optimistic. Yeah. But
it must suck to be young and just know that you're going to get your ass kicked in tennis or hockey by these two schmucks, right?
I love that. I love kicking young ass in any sport. It's one of the great joys of being in your 50s.
I know, right? But it's kind of funny how Boulder, your new book, sort of, you know, from the slow movement into Boulder, like, because old people are slow, right? So it's kind of a continuation of the whole philosophy.
Yeah.
You know, keeping slow and stuff, right?
Yeah, in some ways, I guess if you think of a great Venn diagram of the work I do, I suppose there's a little overlap there where physically, in some ways, you do slow down, and we as we go older, we tend to, you know, certain forms of memory recall and mathematical calculations get slower, but a lot of things don't. You know, a lot of, you know, pattern recognition, which leads to problem solving, seeing the big picture, all that stuff gets faster as you get older. And I think you probably recognize that yourself, and anyone, you know, past 45 is going to recognize that you've just got this enormous onboard database of experience that you can bring to the game, right? And that allows you to cut through the crap to see the core of the problem to get there more quickly. So in a weird kind of way, in some ways you speed up as you get older. You get quicker at things, the things you're good at and that you've invested in over the years. But coming back to your question, yeah, there's clearly a kind of slow thing. So in a sense, one reason I think that we denigrate aging is that we see first the physical slowing, right? And that's caught up with the general cult of speed thing. We hate the idea of slowing. It's seen as lazy, boring, unproductive, stupid, right? All these bad things. So you think, okay, a whole group of people as we get older, we're going to slow down a bit. That feels like a bad thing. So that you add that extra layer onto the other aversion we feel to the very idea of growing older, and then also mortality and the fact that we're going to die eventually. And you can see how people could be sitting at 32 and thinking, Jesus Christ, I've only got 8 years left, right? And then it's all over. It's not, right? That's the thing to take away from what we're talking about here. It's not over. It's just beginning, yeah. There's a great quote from Carl Jung, right? The famous psychotherapist who said, life really does begin at 40. Everything up until then is just research. And I think there's a kind of truth in that, right? That you're working out who you are, how you fit into the world, what lights you up, what you're really good at, and you streamline as you get older. You let stuff go. The stuff that doesn't move you, doesn't put fire in your belly, gone, just gone. Whereas when you're younger, you feel you've got to do everything. You're trying to impress people. You just feel less worried about what other people think of you as you grow older. You feel more confident in yourself, more at ease in your own skin. And that just opens up the world's, wider, right? Because you go in knowing what you want, knowing what you bring to the party, and you can just go for it, right? So if you go in without that cult of youth filter that holds you back, you push it to one side, as Jung said, man, life can just be starting at 40.
It's just an observation, right? Like over the past 10 years or so in my work, my social life through my work, like 95% of my social life, I'm surrounded by people in their 20s, whether it was my former employees when I had my company or whatever. I just end up in this crowd, which is kind of weird because, you never have planned for that. You've always assumed that, you will hang out with your contemporaries. But I get the whole cult of youth thing, the way society looks at it. But for me, it really has been a fountain of youth, I think, over the past decade. I don't have to talk about mortgages with anybody. I hang out with my best friends at a dinner party, and at some point they're talking about interest rates and, we're going to switch up the mortgage on the summer. And I'm going, oh my God.
Property prices, that's the bane of all dinner parties, yeah.
Like I'm a guy who doesn't own anything. I wrote an article about it, like simply don't own anything. I've never wanted to. So those conversations are boring. But hanging out with people in their 20s, like they're optimistic. Oh, my whole life is ahead of me, and there's nothing wrong, and that is really like a youthful pill for me to take constantly, right? So much so that hanging out with older people is just like, oh, sometimes boring. But I get the whole point with how we focus on youth as like, the prime alpha age group of our society, right? Which of course is stupid. But it's kind of cool to be that older dude. And I mean with people who know me, right? Like in my work. So, let's let the old guy talk. Tell us some stories from back in the day, and
what was it like in the old days?
Yeah. You kids today,
I think that the real fountain of youth, but I kind of don't think of it as a fountain of youth. That's the phrase I tend to avoid. I think it's just the elixir of life, let's call it that, right? It just keeps you on your toes, keeps you sharp, keeps you fresh, whatever age you are, is mixing with different generations, right? And that's something we've lost over the last century or so. We live in age silos. You clearly don't, but I would say most people do, get stuck into chronological ruts where everybody in their social work circle is more or less the same age. And it just narrows, right? It also locks you into kind of ageist stereotypes because the only people you know are about the same age. And one of the big things that I'm talking about in my book Boulder and a lot of the work I'm doing now is the importance of smashing these age silos, tearing down the walls and just mixing up the generations again. So that could be, someone like you, in your work, spending a lot of time with people in their 20s and 30s. But I think, there's a lot to be gained having, and this is something that I've gained through my own shifting thoughts about aging through writing the book and so on, is having friends and people like, in my network now who are much older, who I don't know, I'm not sure if I consciously avoided that before, but it just wasn't there. And now I'm definitely more open to it. And there's just different perspectives. People at different stages. It's like this whole thing in the workplace now about diversity. Yeah, diverse teams are more collaborative, they're more productive, they're more creative, people are happier. But the problem is in the workplace, we focus diversity on ethnicity, sexual orientation, skin color, all that stuff. And age is only now being added to the picture, but it's just as important. And I think that's something to remember as well, that throughout human history, people of different ages mixed, whether it was in the market, the family home, the farm, wherever you went, right? You just, and to get, again, it's like we were talking at the very beginning of our conversation about how we're kind of getting back now to, streets you can walk in, cities that are quiet, hearing your neighbors, all that stuff that's just always been there and that we kind of respond to naturally. People light up when they're mixed with different generations, and it's just so good for everybody. It boosts everybody's happiness, well-being, productivity, everything. So that's something to bear in mind as well, I think, for I don't mean just for you, but just for everybody, is to be open to hurling yourself into a kind of rich age pool, right?
So I'm going to see your Carl Jung quote, and I'm going to raise it with Jerry Seinfeld. No, it was just, I just thought of this actually, like one of his new Netflix specials, Jerry Seinfeld, he's talking about, being older. I don't think he's in like 62 or something. I can't remember, in his 60s, but he was saying, the greatest thing about being older is you just get to say no. Hey, do you want to go up to that restaurant up on 85th? And, if you're younger, you're going, oh, I don't know. I'm kind of busy. I kind of have to, you make excuses. And he says, you get older, you're just going, no, I don't want to do that. Yeah. And you just walk away. And I found myself doing this more. And then I saw that Netflix series. I'm going, oh my God, it is a thing. It's awesome. You just get to say no. And they're going, okay, older guy going no. So
no,
we don't
it's such a beautiful word.
That.
I mean, my first book is called In Praise of Slow, but it's in praise of slow. But I often think it could just be easily called In Praise of No. Yeah, the power of no. To again, it's that idea of winnowing down, focusing on what's important. And well, you've given me a Seinfeld. I see your Seinfeld. I'll raise you an Ann Landers, right? Ann Landers, the old agony aunt. Yeah. Now we're really down to brass tacks. Yeah, and her quote she wrote once that at 20. We worry about what other people think of us. At 40, we stop worrying about what other people think of us. And at 60, we realize they were never thinking about us at all. Right? And I think what that gets at is that, what is it, maybe the lightness or freedom that comes on in later life, just to say no and not have to hedge it with explanations. Just say, you know what? Nah, that's not for me. No. And that's enough. And I think that, again, that's something as I get, I'm past about 52, heading 60s, 8 years away. I can already feel that, and I'm looking forward to getting to 60 and thinking, I can actually be even less worried about what other people. I don't worry, especially now, particularly to be honest, but maybe I'll be even worry even less, 10 years from now. So
I have a friend, a colleague who lives in Canada, and then we went to film the Life-Sized City in Toronto. This is like 3 years ago. We have 10 guests in each episode, and he's a very prominent voice on the internet with regard to urbanism and architecture. I don't choose the guests. We have a whole research team who does that, but he kind of tweeted out or something, and he says, Michael's coming to Toronto with this series, and they never called me. Oh, and then he had a whole article about trying to stay relevant. I guess if you've been a prominent voice or are a prominent voice, and then somebody doesn't call you about that topic or whatever. So that's also another part of aging, when you said at 60 they don't think of you at all. That kind of made me think of that. No, but I mean, staying relevant. You're publishing books. I'm still doing a TV series. I mean, I feel like I'm hopefully going to be relevant, but then maybe not. If this person I respect and admire had a little bit of a, wow, I may not be relevant anymore. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, how do we tackle relevance or staying relevant, not just to our family and friends, but also people like us who have a public profile? Good
question. That's a tough one. I mean, I think, just in a kind of broad meta sense, I think, stay curious, right? I think curiosity that's the elixir of life, right? Just keep moving forward, keep treating life as a process of opening doors instead of closing them, right? Just keep moving forward, find things that just get you out of bed in the morning. And that's one way to keep yourself well and keep yourself, alive and living and aging well. But some of that stuff is going to spark off and be relevant to the bigger culture if you're somebody who wants to be relevant in that public sense, I think. Just keep doing new stuff. We're both people who do, speaking, so we're on the circuit. And I've lost track of the number of people out there who are just going round and round in circles talking about a book they wrote 25 years ago, right? And they're just delivering the same keynote endlessly. And for me, that feels like the kiss of death. It's just Groundhog Day in the worst form. But, there's going to come a time when people are not going to want to hear that 25-year-old book message, and that person's going to end up on some form of scrap heap. So, I guess whatever line of work you're in or however you define relevant, I think the key is always going to be stay curious, right? Stay alert, stay alive, just open doors, see what's behind them, just keep moving forward. The relevant part of that equation has to be me, to keep myself from dying of boredom, right? And ennui. So I've got to, reinvent and twist and pivot, right? That word of the moment.
So I was thinking here at the end, talking about getting older, talking about slow. What city would you like to, I was going to say die in. That was kind of a weird question. But what city, I don't think people like you and me, we retire. I don't anticipate hitting 65 and then stopping. Creative people just sort of keep on going, I guess. But what city would you like to sort of spend your last days? That doesn't sound good either.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, what city would you like to be old in?
Yeah. Would I like to live out my final chapter? Maybe let's put it that way. That's a good question. I'm very partial to London, I must say. I've lived here a long time now. I've lived other places. I travel a lot. But this city is, partly because it is maybe the global city, right? You just feel like, and I grew up as you did, in Western Canada, and I've been a journalist, and I just always feel like in Canada, everything comes later. You feel like you're far away from things that really matter. It's all kind of secondhand. Whereas in London, I always feel like you're on the bleeding edge of things, ideas, art, literature, media. You just feel like this is where it's happening, right? And I love that feeling. I love being here, and then to be in a city like that at the same time has all of those human qualities we talked about before of being very walkable. I saw in fact, yesterday, there was a global survey came out ranking the most walkable cities in the world. London's in the top 5. I know you probably saw that, right? And I thought, yeah, it totally is. I've got a car, but I almost never use it, right? The only time I use it is to go play hockey, or if I'm driving out to go off a holiday in the countryside, right? Otherwise, I'm walking, or I'm rollerblading, or running, or something. And so I just think that this city has got that, it's got the fast and the slow. You can choose when to slow down. You can choose when to speed up. And it also has that deep reservoir of novelty, just newness. And that is the essence, right? That's the lodestar. That's the cornerstone of a life well lived, in my view. And that's where I expect I probably will be. At 50, I don't think I'm going to be for the next 40 years. I'm going to go live elsewhere now. My kids are grown up. I'm an empty nester as of 2 weeks ago. So, new vistas are opening up of possibilities of where I might live. And I've been in London a long time. I think I can see myself going somewhere else now. I would have probably gone had COVID not punched me and all of us in the side of the head, right, with a sucker punch. But yeah, I'll go somewhere else. But I can imagine coming back to London. And
I've always said I'm going to Barcelona.
I said Amsterdam at the beginning, but Barcelona was the other city I would have put on that list.
Barcelona, walkable, kind of bikeable, and hopefully it'll get better. But like the beach, I just want to live like in a warmer city. I think where there's a beach and good restaurants and nightlife and whatnot. So yeah, something like that for me. Somewhere warmer anyway. Maybe Mexico even. I don't know. Big city. I don't want to go to any retirement home. I want to be in a big city, in a neighborhood. I will never, retire to somewhere like whatever they do in Florida or what they do down in the south of Spain. All the Danes and the Swedes go down to the little colonies down there, and just keep speaking Danish and Swedish and watching Danish and Swedish TV in the south of Spain now. I'll be local in a big city, and then I will die happy.
That's I totally on board with that. That's exactly how I can't think of anything worse than being a community, right, or something like that, where it's yeah. And I'm definitely an urban person. I love the countryside and love spending time in it, and I love the English countryside, green and pleasant land, and all that. And who knows? Maybe at some point I might, I don't know, maybe have a place to stay there. But I'm always going to be a city boy, right? I'm always going to be someone who just thrives on that cauldron of human drama, right? That's this what I've always loved. It's what feeds me, and it's going to carry me out. They're going to carry me out. They're going to carry me out feet first. It's going to be in a city somewhere, definitely.
All right, we got to plan this, man. We got to plan our working retirement days. We got to coordinate,
I'm in. And even long before that, let's see each other again in person, right? Somewhere soon. Get some wine going and watch the world go by.
Absolutely. Dude, man, it's been great to see your face and to talk to you about all this stuff, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Likewise. No, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. And yeah, till next time.
We'll play hockey. You'll beat me at hockey, but I'll beat you at tennis, right?
Yeah.
Okay, dude, man. I hope to see you soon when we're on the other end of this pandemic, and take it easy until then. Take it slow and be old, brother.
Stay slow, stay bold, and I will see you, my friend, on the other side.
That wraps up another episode of the Coolville Urbanism Podcast. I'm your host, Mikael Colville-Andersen. Thanks for listening. And remember, it's your city. Take it back.